Hey ratbags, my name's Jade. I've covered Grounded for years and I've just got over 1,000 hours in the game, so who better to deliver you a Wish I Knew Earlier guide, especially for PlayStation players. Less spoilerific than I'm known for, hopefully just giving you more guidance about where to go in terms of progression, explaining some of the systems and giving you a few tips about armor and weapons and bugs. Find it useful, go and check out the rest of my guides and new ones that I'm doing specifically for you, and let's go. Everything I wish I knew earlier. In your first few hours and days of playing Grounded, you really want to make sure you're near one of these field stations, as you'll be coming back here time and time again to analyse resources. This is super important and don't neglect it. This is how you unlock a bunch of recipes for new armour, weapons and gear. And also gives you a good amount of raw science, which has become more and more important as Grounded has come on after 1.0. And with that in mind, do pay attention to the new or relatively newer quest system. This got added in the last update 1.3 and effectively gives players even more guidance about what they should be doing, but more crucially, more rewards. You'll get more raw science for completing objectives. You won't be able to see the quest until you've got to the oak tree and spoken to Burgle, and that means that you've got to stop the mites from chewing the cables. I'll mention this because it's one of the first things Grounded pros know to do, but actually the game sometimes loses a bit of guidance in showing you exactly where this mite cave is. It tells you you've got to investigate it, but it doesn't tell you to check under the tripods here. So basically, don't always just go by the quests, think a bit more logical about what it's asking you to do and look around the environment, always making sure you get up high to check the vista and see if you're close to a new landmark. And ultimately, get this activated as soon as possible. Until you've gone to the oak tree, the computer screens at these field stations will be not working, and you're kind of missing out on crucial parts of the game in seeing about the milk molars, how to get better stats like your health and stamina regen, and spending your raw science in the Burgle shop, which is pretty much how you can get also new recipes for build pieces, new items, crafting stations, decor, as well as mutations. Grounded can be a scary place with all sorts of dangerous creatures, especially the wall spiders, but if you go to the extra effort of going to the southeast part of the map and finding the hedge, you'll be able to find the resource scanner satellite. This is a must for newer players. Of course, I'm well used to where everything is in Grounded, having played it for nearly 4 years, so I know every bug spawn, every resource. But for newer people, you definitely want to grip on where to find more of a resource once you've discovered it. It'll basically show off anything that you want to put through as long as you've found that item first. And that it goes for bug parts too. So if you kill a ladybug and you want to find out where more ladybugs will be on the map, it will literally pinpoint showing a red box where the last ones have been sighted. It also shows a heat map as well of yellow and green, where you also might find other places where you find them resources. It's tucked away in the hedge ascent, so like I said, if you go right to the beginning of the hedge on the southeastern side, close to the deck, you'll find a way up via paperclip and some branches, and eventually you'll come to this switch inside an abandoned lab. You'll now be able to scan for resources at any of the field stations that you discover. In the early days, I wish I'd marked out more locations on the map, especially places that I have to return to because I didn't have the right type of tool to break certain resources. Pretty obvious, but there's so many little nooks and crannies in Grounded, it can be easy to forget or miss some place that has got some rocks that you can return to and get. There's a small selection of tools and rotten weapons that you can find across the yard that can be beneficial but only for a short period of time. Like this ant club here, I'd recommend you never really upgrade any of this stuff. Using the marble and the quartzite, you can go ahead and boost up your weapons, but be a bit more selective, and whenever you're going to upgrade something, try and get the full version crafted and made first. I stupidly spent a lot of resources on a rotten larvae blade, thinking I'd be able to pair it with a trinket that gives me more damage using rotten weapons, but in the end it really wasn't worth it. However, there are some locations definitely worth heading to first. As soon as you get a bomb, make sure you go and pick up the pinch whacker, which you'll find on the eastern flower bed wall. You can check out my more individual videos for more details, and you'll also be able to pick up the rotten berry charm. This is the charm that you can use to get a little bit more oomph out of certain stuff. It'll go ahead and release a toxic cloud that will do damage over time like poison, usually on the third hit with any rotten weapon. So the ultimate lesson, get your base established and then really go on an adventure and take a look at stuff, and make sure you bring plenty of the map markers that you can craft using simple clover leaves and stems. Combat in Grounded can be pretty tough. If you don't learn how to perfect parry, you might have a harder time. They have added other ways, like I said, range attacks and the ability to hold and block using your shields. But I would say try and master the art of perfect parrying. You'll benefit so much more and not be too scared of taking on creatures, even wolf spiders. Something to help with that, and I recommend using for a while, is Koi armor. I kind of wish I'd got this and maybe upgraded it a bit sooner. It's a great little first tier 2 armor set that you'll find once you've explored the pond, and it can really help you because it slows down the parry window, giving more time for you to perfect parry and learn the nuances of bugs attacking. Later on in the game, once you get roly-poly armor, that's a good one as well, which increases the blocking bar so you can take more hits while just holding the block button instead of having to rely on perfect parry. Basically, you will unlock a lot more styles with the armor sets, mutations and perks. You just got to get to some of it. You'll also find more trinkets, and there are certain other things that can help with this as well. But yeah, I still wish even now that I spent a bit more time getting used to perfect parrying, either doing it in a playgrounds map or just creative mode to get a good feel for the combat if you're finding it tough. Something that helps with the weaknesses and strengths of seeing what enemies are is by tapping the triangle button on a creature and then tapping the L1 button to peep it. This will then give you a breakdown of the weaknesses and strengths, and you can check this at any time in the actual in-game menu. These are the cards that unlock. You can get gold ones that don't really mean much. You used to have to get all of the gold cards to get 100% completion for the end of the game, but that's been changed now, so you don't have to worry. But yeah, this could be your guide to making sure you've got the right weapons for the right part of the yard. Taking on a bunch of mites, well, they're relatively easy, but you can still check their weaknesses and make sure you've got the right tool to take them down a bit more. As a general rule of thumb, you want to have one of kind of every attacking attribute. There's quite a few. You've got basically blade damage with swords, hammer damage, club damage, dagger damage, ranged and spear. So your weapons will all have these extra attributes that do damage against bug types that are weak to it. Pretty basic and simple like any other game that you've probably played. But there are mutations as well, and mutations are super important for your loadouts. It's definitely worth working and progressing towards each level of some of these, where you've got different levels for different amount of kills that give more damage output. So kill 10 bugs with a sword and you're going to start doing a little bit more damage with that mutation active. Kill 50 and you get the second tier, kill third and you get some extra bonuses. So it's worth trying to unlock max levels in mutations and combining your builds with your armor and weapons to do the right damage at the right time. It does get a bit overwhelming, and this is where people might be lost a little bit in combat, but utilising all the different systems like the trinkets, mutations, armour and the effects of weapons, that's where you really start to become a bug killing master. For the longest of time, I kind of ignored certain things like trinkets, or didn't pay too much attention to armour and maybe the special bonuses that you get from wearing all 3 pieces. Don't underestimate the power of a good range build as well. There's been lots of ways it's been improved in Grounded over the years, and certainly in early game, being able to find a space where a bug won't be able to maybe kill you and then just raining lots of arrows down is a surefire way to kill it without having to worry about being too good at actually hitting it with a melee weapon. You do kind of want to kill everything you run into in the early stages in terms of aphids, weevils, gnats especially, as some of that stuff is going to be important for getting either your bow or arrows. And ants are definitely worth killing early game, especially soldiers, so that you can craft the full ant set armour. And either way, it's all going to contribute to you unlocking new mutations if you're using weapons. Moving beyond to what happens next, once you've explored, maybe found some of the rotten weapons that are lying around in different nooks and crannies, you may want to start thinking about the dungeons. These are the laboratories, and there are 4 of them that you need to complete to pretty much progress the story. You're meant to be able to do these in any order, but in reality there is a set order that you should probably follow, as it will make life easier. First one absolutely should be the hedge. Now you don't want to be doing it all in one trip. Go to the hedge, grab a bunch of the berries there, maybe find and get more resources along the way, then come back and go off again with more space. Pets are definitely a viable option, but you're going to need to unlock the mushroom crafting recipes first to get the pet house so you can store them, and they'll hold more items. But alas, returning to the hedge, you can see I'm a bit more prepared here. And this is why it pays off to explore all the nooks and crannies. Again, something you need to focus on, because you'll find things like these: the skeleton of an omnent worker with a trinket. I've mentioned trinkets earlier. There's over 30 of these. They can be found in various locations on bodies, also by getting them from killing enemies and a random chance of dropping. And they can enhance your character build, giving you more damage output for certain elements, or going ahead and just giving extra bonuses. The omnent cards do give negatives as well as bonuses though, so look out for them. Don't forget to throw weapons as well. They'll often do a lot more damage than any regular attack that you have, as long as you can learn to throw with good aim. So returning to the hedge, obviously this is where, like I showed you earlier, you'll turn on the resource scanner, and then you keep further going exploring and you'll come across the actual hedge laboratories. This is where you'll get the first of the super burgle chips to progress the story. Now, to save time, ideally, if you can, you want to try and get hold of a tier 2 hammer before exploring some of this zone, or if you've found the recipe for it, examine what you need. Pay attention to the egg sacs that you're going to come across, as these are a great way to get some more advanced bug parts. Ideally, you went and got some of that berries, and then you went and made 4 berry level with it, and you've brought it with you. And now all you need to pick up is a boiling gland and some stink bug parts. Now, to be fair, the boiling gland generally only drops from the actual bombardier beetles themselves, so you'll have to kill one of them, but the stink bug parts you'll get from the egg sacs here. So by bringing them 2 resources with you, you'll eventually be able to craft your own tier 2 hammer once you reach the end and get access to the main labs. You'll find a crafting bench here, and pretty much at most of the laboratories, meaning you can craft your tier 2 hammer, and then you can use it to take on the milk molars that are also in these laboratories. Hammers are pretty good for also taking on the tased teas. And again, if you brought the right resources, you may even be able to craft your tier 2 axe by the time you come to this part as well, as you'll find a bunch of resources in the top laboratory. So yes, follow the story. Sometimes in survival crafting games, the temptation is to get your base built up and get really established. But I think in Grounded, you definitely want to do a few things, like go to the oak tree really as soon as possible, and then after that maybe head to the hedge once you've got a few of their materials to get the best gear quicker and make life a bit easier, getting more bonuses like the milk molars. After you've done the hedge, you can take things a bit more easier, relax a little bit more, explore to your heart's content, and just unlock and get more body parts from bugs. One aspect you be careful of is when you're finding the upgrade rocks, the marble and quartzite. Don't go ahead upgrading everything. I mentioned earlier not to spend too much of them on rotten weapons, but also don't mess around upgrading weapons and gear that you really don't think you're going to vibe with. There is a limited amount of these rocks around the yard until you get later recipes that allow you to craft it out of certain bug parts and sap. So if you spent the first few hours going to the hedge, exploring, unlocking a lot of stuff there, hopefully you've got an idea about what kind of weapons you like using. Is it spears? Is it axes? Is it swords? Then I would put all your resources into upgrading and crafting them at the little anvil that you can get. At the very least, never start upgrading beyond level 5 unless you're really confident you're going to be using them armor and weapon sets. Although sadly, that's another thing that you might want to check on a wiki or a guide. Lots of the armor sets and special perks that you get from them won't actually unlock until you've upgraded it to level 6. You basically end up having a choice whether or not you want to upgrade something down the sleek path or go down the mighty. The mighty path generally will just increase the base stats of the armor, giving more health or more defense. And then the sleek path unlocks new bonuses for that armor. This is a kind of mid to late game kind of thing, because you won't be getting a lot of that until you've completed more of the laboratories and unlocking the recipes, or being able to get a lot of the upgrade rocks with your tier 2 and maybe even tier 3 hammer, but it's still worth bearing in mind right now. So after the hedge, and really you want to be doing the pond. You can do the pond before the hedge, but I do feel like the pond should be the second dungeon that you complete. There are bonuses to doing the pond first. You will gain access to muscle sprouts, which can increase the power and basically potency of some of your smoothies to give you more healing, more stamina and stuff. And there are no actual milk molars that you'll be using your hammer for in this dungeon. Instead, you're going to need a tier 2 dagger to hack away at certain roots. It is worth investing a little bit in making sure you've got some breathing apparatus properly, and you've got diving fins as well. These can be found by killing a lot of the water creatures and unlocking recipes that way. You can do this with just the bare minimum, which is a breathing stick. But the amount of times I died in the early days because I was trying to rush it or not bother crafting certain things, it just wasn't really worth it. You go out and spend that time making your special flippers and they'll give you a bit more speed in water. After that though, again, same thing, don't spend too much time upgrading any of your water gear. Because once you've done the actual water laboratory, there isn't that much reason to use it again. There's only certain other spots where there'll be some deeper water, and sure, it may have more dangerous creatures, but it's not something you'll be spending a lot of time in. So there's no point in upgrading the breathing stick or necessarily the spear or maybe the flippers. Some things that are good are definitely things like the bone knife. And as I mentioned earlier, the quest stuff. You can get special extra advanced breathing gear armor, but generally it'll just give you extra health and defense and not really increase how much oxygen you've got. But yeah, the pond, absolutely, that's the main plus point, is being able to come back here over and over again to pick these sprouts up until you grow them yourself. And once again, if you explore all parts of the ponds and the smaller little laboratories, you should find enough resources, or plenty easy resources, like some of the koi scales and the fish bones at the bottom, to go ahead and craft a lot of the armor and stuff that you'll need, like the bone knife. After this, you want to head to the Haze and do the Haze laboratory, bringing bombs that gain access, and then you unlock the oven, so you'll be able to craft the mushroom bricks and start thinking about getting more advanced upgrades. You also need the oven if you want to start crafting the boss summon items especially. And that's another thing as well, you've got to pay attention to finding the recipes for bosses. I'm not going to spoil it too much here, but certainly if you want to fight against the broodmother, the mantis and more, you are going to have to summon them with special items that you can only cook or craft at a oven. So that's the main benefit of completing the laboratory, and in fact you could do this first again before the others, that you'll gain access to the oven and other stuff. But it is a bit more formidable challenge than the others. And probably the toughest one, as it does involve a mini boss fight, is the Black Ant Lab. This is where you're going to start unlocking the tier 2 upgrading stuff and unlocking the recipes that you can make tier 1 upgrading stuff out of bug parts. It's also where you can get the glue masher, which means you can repair a lot of your tools and stuff once you've upgraded it past level 5. But yeah, it's a huge labyrinth, so you might want to make sure you bring plenty of ways to signify if you've gone down the right tunnel, and lots of bombs to gain access to certain points, at least 5 of them. At this stage you do want to be rocking something like ladybug armor, and with the launch on PlayStation and Switch and new update, there should be ant queens residing in these ant hills now, so you may have to, or take a look at them and see what you need to give them a special treat. It looks like they eat sandos, different varieties for each of the ant queens, but you won't be able to probably craft them until you've got the oven unlocked. I've not spoiled exactly what you'll be fighting and encountering inside the Black Ant Lab, but a good upgraded hammer or possibly even better club is recommended. So I've kind of rushed through a lot of that stuff, but remember, it's meant to be a heads up and just a talking about what I wish on you earlier, and certainly the order of the labs I think is important. The way I've described it there is kind of the easiest way to run through them for less experienced players. And hopefully I've given you a sense of what you'll be unlocking and what the rewards will be, and hopefully given you a bit more heads up. The story and the quest should explain some of that as well. And actually completing the Black Ant laboratory normally gives you quick, easy access to the small laboratory inside the sandbox, which will give you more upgrades to candy upgrades for your weapons. Basically applying elemental damage types to a lot of your tools and stuff. As well as the picnic bench, that's the other one that you maybe want to explore, as that will give you access to the full suite then of elemental damage types with candies. It's also worth mentioning events. There are special events in Grounded that basically are one time. Until recently, with New Game Plus, they will reset any world events that take place. World events are things like turning off the haze, which you can do, upsetting Woz so they break free from the Brawny Boy bin box, or blowing up the rock so that the spade gets you easy access to the picnic table. These are all events that should reset with each New Game Plus. I don't really want to spoil it too much about what happens with some of these events that can take place, but players definitely regret certain things. Like turning off the haze might make the rest of the map a bit tougher, and obviously having wasps roaming around isn't going to be no fun. But you do need to do some of these if you want to progress and take on every kind of boss and explore new biomes. So now at least in New Game Plus you can reset this and keep them a little bit safer for a while longer. Hopefully I've put across that the game is kind of skewed to being a perfect blocker, or now maybe getting a bit more range gear is certainly another option, but there are still definitely a lot of choices in between the weapons that you use. As I said, focusing on the right weapon to take on the right type of bug, if it's weak to spicy or fresh damage, that's really important as you get to the mid game and late game. but there are some weapons that are just always better than others. Clubs and hammers are always going to do more stun damage, so good for taking on larger bugs and then maybe running away if you're really not equipped. And in general, you'll find special unique weapons like the mint mace that will always be a lot better than you upgrading a ant club with fresh, because it's already got some extra bonuses added in built to it. So when you come across recipes for these more unique weapons, these are definitely worth investing upgrading. There are also now 4 tiers of weapons. Although the tier 4 stuff is very limited compared to the rest, it has just been added with this update as well. So for the longest time, tier 3 was kind of the max. So if you've got the tier 3 axe, which is the termite axe, then that is going to be probably the best chopping weapon you could get, until again you got something a bit later called the sour axe. Axes are pretty goated as well in just being a regular weapon rather than just simply a tool, whereas hammers tend to be still slow. Even the tier 3 one isn't necessarily that good at taking on enemies, not compared to maybe a club, although some enemies, some creatures are definitely weak to specifically just hammer damage rather than club, and you can check all this stuff out once you start unlocking these weapons. But overall, the shield and one-handed weapon combo is never really going to let you down. Whether or not you're using an axe, a spear or a dagger, or maybe a one-handed sword, these are always good or better for newer players that haven't mastered parrying. The shield increases the amount of defense bar that you can hold and have as well, so getting access to your shields early on is super important. Whether you start with the Weevil shield, which is great, and then hopefully moving on to the Black Ant shield and then the Fire Ant shield. The Ladybug shields are really cool as well. Now some of them is going to take a while to unlock, but yeah, having a shield can really be the difference. You can block with two-handed weapons, but your defense bar is going to be a lot shorter, which means enemies can break it and do damage against you. A lot of the secret recipes for weapons are really hidden away, like in the sandbox where you need special keys, and on the picnic table as well. So if you can't access some of these boxes, make sure you're looking out for guides or exploring a lot and finding the right keys to unlock them. The salt mace here, that I think goes really well with a decent Black Ant shield, that is something that you'll only be able to find by finding the right key, or possibly even the right time of day when you're exploring the sandbox to unlock it. And some weapons you just won't be able to get until you've got the right type of gear. I love the Katana, but you're not going to be able to get it until you've got at least a full antlion armor set and fresh defense activated. Another small one there, make sure you eat 10 mints and 10 spicy candies to give yourself 2 new mutations, as well as I think 3 sour pieces eventually. That will also unlock a sour mutation. The Katana isn't as loved as it used to be, as it got nerfed pretty heavily, but it's still great at taking on spiders, and particularly the Broodmother, which although is optional to complete the game, if you want to carry on playing it in New Game Plus, you do have to defeat each of the side bosses, which are the Broodmother, the Mantis and the Was Queen. But it's relatively fast. It's also got new animations and attacks with the latest update, and that goes for all two-handed swords by the looks of things. But they definitely feel different, so play around with them when you get a new weapon, see if it's your kind of vibe before really upgrading it again. And some quick stuff now. You won't need to worry about base raids from hundreds of bugs. Literally, it does increase as you progress. So at the start, if you're pissing off some spiders because you killed a lot of them or you're hanging around their area, then you'll get like 1 or 2 baby spiders attack your first little encampment. After this though, it does start increasing as you spend more time in the game. So base locations are important, as I mentioned. But don't panic, don't have to build a million walls to keep enemies away. If you want lots of crow feathers, you should head to the Haze. There's a big collection of them that you'll find normally in and around some of the gullies, as well as the picnic table. And don't miss out on scanning for crow pieces, as that will show the locations in the sandbox, and you can dig up a lot of the boxes in there. That will give you lots of candy resources too. If you want good supply of rotten food, always head over to the trash zone, as there'll be a bunch of hot dogs and apple pieces and donuts that you can hack away and then use this to grow your crops quicker. The best place for salt is in the sandbox, and a good area to go and get a lot of spicy cha-cha sweets if you take out the antlion tunnels. Picnic table is your best chance for getting lots of bee fuzz, so you can make stuffed creatures, which also give you lots of bonuses and buffs. If you place down a stuffed bug version, it will give you more chance of getting resources by killing them bugs, and if you go ahead and put a trophy down of a creature, then that will give you a damage buff against them that will last for a short while. So it's worth making like a little mini bug museum and keeping your trophies up in somewhere that you can access them quick and easy. Getting across the yard has always been a bit of an issue unless you're going to build a huge amount of zip lines. But with the telepotties that have been added in New Game Plus, you will be able to place these down once you've bought them from the science shop. So until then, it's probably worth investing a little bit in certain zip lines taken to places like the barbecue fall zone. So it's quick and easy to pick up lots of the charcoal which you'll need to make more reinforced build pieces. And a good zip line that will take you up to the upper yard. The upper yard is definitely a much more challenging experience. From termites to the ladybug larvae, and more annoyingly fire ants, which plague you all over the upper yard. But this is where you can find an abundance of resources and bugs that you'll be able to craft a lot of tier 3 armor sets. So when it comes to base locations, you want somewhere that's maybe in the middle or very close to the upper yard ascent, as that's where you're going to be spending a lot more of your time. So I hope this video has been helpful, especially for newer players. Like I said, some of it has been a bit less spoilerific than I normally do, because I'm known for giving maybe too much away, and hopefully I'll just give you a lowdown, a rough guide to your progression and certain bits and pieces that I think are worth your benefit. I've got lots more beginner guides coming, lots more value tips on areas that you'll be exploring, and of course I've got all my older guides which should be in good nick, as some things have definitely changed or grounded, but a lot of the stuff in terms of locations and stuff hasn't really. So go and check them all out, make sure you're subscribed and you've got the notification bell dinged. I'll see you ratbags later.